You want to do the voice?
We absolutely need to. All right, can everyone get them? That's fantastic. Can everyone get their mics up, please?
Hey, ladies and gentlemen.
Your mics are off, so just wait. Shaq, can you get your mic in place, please, mate, and a little lower because
it cuts your face off.
I just don't want your beautiful face being covered up.
Right
There we go. Lovely. All right.
Oh, hang on. So the other show is okay for my face to be covered up. It's not this one.
Yeah.
No, the other show you were like this the whole way.
America.
For 2 hours.
Well, I know that
We
way.
rip into everyone on this show, so yeah.
I know. I thought that was the case, but I thought, well, what am I supposed to do with this mic? So what here?
Yeah, it's fine, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Just
will.
left nostril or right?
Well, yeah.
You're the face trying to understand it.
Can we go?
People are talking to us.
Are we ready?
I don't know. Are we? Have you turned the mics on yet?
All right. Okay. I will start the mics. The mics are now on.
Hi, everyone. So we are doing this as a pre-record show because we're like massively late.
We are not late. We're just organised
So
differently. That's
the
different,
1 o'clock
okay?
show is starting at 2:36.
Beautiful. All right. So
The show must go on.
it must. All right. So can I have a couple of seconds silence as we get into the show?
A couple of seconds silence
Yes.
for the
Lest we forget.
morning
ready?
of Aaron's love life.
Hey, it's Edge Radio Australia. Malloy with you, of course, ready for the greater wealth. Now, not on our normal time, of course. This is normally the replay time on a Sunday, 5 o'clock. I hope you're all sitting back very comfy on your Sunday afternoon. Now, we have a special crew in front of us today, and special, I'll invert the commas with one of them. We have the Shaved Monkey, of course, over there. He's very special indeed.
Especially with my beanie. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
So many names. For
It
that
hides
thing, but never
my
mind.
luscious locks that you're so jealous of.
Our special international guest, we'll call him Shaquille. How are you, mate?
Not too shabby, mate.
You are not too shabby indeed. And of course, Derek, you're our moral level here. Okay, you are
The moral compass.
you are Mr. Clean Up Aisle 4. Okay, that's really what you're.
We
here
needed
for,
a
mate.
big mop this afternoon.
It's been a big show. We've obviously done a show before this. It's been a bit wild this afternoon. So let's jump into it because I do not have any idea what's on the show today.
You never do.
It's good.
I came across some fascinating vision on Klaus Schwab. I'd like to play some video on that if we could. If we've got that queued
Are we doing
up
it
there.
now?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay, hang on.
I wanna-
We're playing with StreamYard, so this could be interesting.
Okay, let's give it a go. All right.
Where's the any
For this reason, what we have seen in the elections in the United States, in the Brexit vote, this anger of people against globalization and against the elites. If you look what's happening in the United States, particularly, you have this anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. It's dismantling the system, and we see certain elements of this now in the new US administration.
But when you look at the bigger picture of the world, what you can say about Donald Trump or what he's doing over the last 2 years is one very big and important thing he's doing. He's destroying the US alliance system all over the world. I don't know why he's doing it, but in a very systematic way, they are our friends, let's destroy that. They are our friends, let's alienate them. He's alienating America's friends in North America, Canada and Mexico, in Western Europe, in the Far East, South Korea, Japan. He's in a systematic way for reasons I cannot fathom. He's destroying the greatest achievement of the US foreign policy for decades and decades to build this alliance, this global alliance system. We've built the rule-based liberal global order.
Wow. All right.
I'm going to interrupt straight away. Now, I'm going to go straight to Travis because, Travis, you are the expert in alienating friends. So what's your thought here?
Oh, I think they're just salty. Like the simple answer is like Trump did really, really well in the 4 years he had. Like he could have. There's a lot more he could have done, but he was up against it. Let's be honest. He brought American manufacturing back to America. Employment was through the roof. He started building the wall, which was actually proven to be a massive success.
Got America out of recession.
Very big one.
the economy was just turning around. It was actually doing really, really well. The everyday people were surviving. Inflation was under control. I'm kind of jealous of America between 2016 and 2020. And I think Australia could have done well to have a Donald Trump over here. I think he'd do a hell of a lot better job than Albanese. So I think what's happening is as one party starts accelerating, others fall down. And we see it all the time in politics, like especially in Australia, when someone sticks their hand up, especially in Australian politics, and starts doing really, really well, instead of everyone else around them like stepping up their game as well and like trying to match them and trying to exceed them and trying to strive for better, it's easier just to sit there and bitch and moan and be salty about stuff. So personally, I think this is what the World Economic Forum is. They're just acting like little bitches, and they should be getting off their asses and actually working harder rather than bitching and moaning about what's going on.
Derek, your thoughts? Please have better thoughts than those.
So there was a word, if you listen to that footage again, there's a word that kept coming up over and over. Klaus Schwab says it, and Yuval Noah Harari was dancing around it, but didn't mention it. Did you pick up the word?
No, both of their accents were diabolical.
It was the word system or systemization.
Yes.
It kept coming up. Which says to me that they had organized a system that's being disrupted.
Well, we know Agenda 21 failed because of Trump.
So, and a lot of the blame is being directed at Trump.
Yeah,
and I think that's really, really interesting that they are also singling out the United States of all the nations in the world as being one of the issues.
Well, okay. United States is the great democracy, right? The great experiment. So and I think that a lot of the work that the WHO and the Economic Forum and all that kind of thing, they've been focusing on the US because I think it's a bit of an extension on that experiment, if you like, right? To see how much they could get away with a non-compliant society, right? Now, Australia is a very compliant society, as our Premier let us know, of course. We're very compliant and very well behaved. Perhaps by pushing the US and seeing the US resisted, maybe that's the telltale sign.
But
you look like you are
America
biting your
resisting?
tongue clean off, SHAK.
No, I'm just trying to make sure the nicotine tablet doesn't fall out.
Right. The big issues here. Okay.
Okay, is it my turn? There's no question directed, but you're just looking at me.
We are.
We're waiting for you to have like a nicotine overdose or something.
My question to you, you hear that, okay? You hear, quite frankly, the guy who's doing the best impersonation of Dr. Evil you can imagine, right? Doing this speech and talking about the fact of, and he used the terms elites, okay, and there's very much an us and them sort of philosophy there, very much talking about taking control of the earth, let's face it, right? What are your thoughts on that? As far as how much do you think they've achieved so far in their little agenda? What are we up to now? 30?
Well, I don't know why you lot are showing such a level of ingratitude. I mean, they're preparing nice, tasty insects for you to eat.
I know.
Synthetic meats.
Sorry, if I
What's
want
the problem?
insects, I'll go to like the Philippines or something. Like,
Look,
well, they're
don't they
actually,
have fried
well,
tarantula?
this is what internationalization's about. They're going to bring the Philippines to you.
yeah,
So
that's handy.
No need. I'll just
So-
go Canning Vale.
That's that'd work. I will just say that I have made sure that I wore an even brighter shirt the second time round on the show, so I would make sure the audience knows that who are listening in.
Who can identify the two of us? Because otherwise,
Exactly.
only our mother can tell us apart.
That's right. That's right. Brother Aaron.
No, it's
No, look,
brother Aaron.
The footage that we've seen there is somewhat. We haven't seen the whole speech. I don't know exactly everything that he said.
Sure.
I've got to say, who's the World Economic Forum? Does anybody know who they are prior to COVID? They just sort of came out of nowhere, and it turns out that they've been this big international group of people that have been meeting for years. But did anybody even hear about them before
I
COVID?
think
The Great Reset?
I think they're the franchise owner of the WHO, of NATO.
Hey, isn't that the UN, the franchise owner?
The UN? No, I don't think. I think the UN is literally one of the franchises. Quite frankly, it seems to me the Economic Forum seems to be the people in charge.
Well, this is what actually scares me a bit, because if we believe that there is really a very powerful group of people that conspire to, make sure that they keep power and main power and become more powerful,
So the dark
then it's not
shadowy
going to be the
underworld.
World Economic Forum, is it? Because we know who they are. We can see them.
That's a
So
very
that
good point.
really makes you wonder who's actually behind it. But look, I will just say this, and I hate to be the left-wing socialist amongst us. Heaven help me. I don't know what's happened to my life. I really don't. I'm not seriously going to defend the WEF, am I? I am, aren't I?
Yeah,
Okay.
you give it a go.
Let's see. I'll try my best.
We'll
I'll
call
try
you the
my
devil,
best.
the
Try and
devil's
keep
advocate.
a straight face for it. Look, there is an argument for government getting involved in economic activities, and there has been an argument, certainly one that was promoted by people like Milton Friedman, who's a great economist of the last century, saying that we need to make sure that we trade with poorer countries around the world, that we need to make sure that we, have a global footprint, that we are, involved in other countries.
Sure.
And so when Trump and people like him on the center right started to talk about bringing manufacturing back domestically, the question is, what happens to the jobs that we're displacing overseas? So then if you bring all the jobs back and then those countries have got people that are poor, what are we going to do? Send them money, send them aid? So it sort of is this vicious circle. I think there's a balancing act. And I think that perhaps what he's referring to there is the anger towards the elites is because the people at the top, the people that are educated, the people that are in economics and all that, they think they know better. And what is happening is they are actually forgetting about all the everyday people that don't have these academic jobs, that are trying to survive and to find their lives are made more difficult. And I honestly think that they are tone deaf to it, that they just don't realize how much the everyday person is struggling and how much they are looking at the things that these elites are saying and going, guys, get out of my life. Let me do my thing. Let me run my life. And I think that's probably some of that disconnect.
Okay. So let's first of all go back to the jobs coming back to, I'm going to use America, for example. You can probably give me better stats than this one. Highest population migration into America. What race or what country does it come from?
Well, the
Mexico?
Southern American countries. It's not so much.
Perfect. South American countries.
South American countries.
So would you have your manufacturing in America for South American people, or would you have your manufacturing in South America for South American people?
Well,
Because the thing is,
the
most of the jobs, most of the people that are doing the low skilled work would be South Americans anyway.
Well,
Because
then
all
do it
the
in the
queue
US
jumpers.
because then you've got the taxation, which is feeding the country.
Yeah, but see, that's the whole point.
But they're still giving the jobs to the people in the South American
but-
countries
well,
because they
hold
don't
on.
be sending money back.
Yeah, but
And then
hold on.
isn't it better for the South American people to get
No.
the jobs in America because it pays better?
Not at all, because you're weakening. It's really actually it's the ultimate. It's the ultimate like infliction of a wound on a poor country for us to sit here in the West. Like, I've been the beneficiary of it, right? Because my parents immigrated to Australia.
Sure.
But it's really the ultimate infliction of a wound. You go to a poor country and you say, hey, you're really poor. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up an immigration program that allows your people to come to my country. We are going to take the very best that you have in your already struggling economy and bring them over here. And by the way, when we bring them over here, this is always love this argument for the people that promote immigration to the United States. They say, well, they do all these manual jobs. They clean the toilets that nobody wants to clean, that they go and do all the gardening that people don't want to do. No. They don't just do that voluntarily. Here's what's really going on. Those people who are undocumented are doing it for a price that is lower than what you would have to pay if you were to pay the local population. So what you have is you have young people who are out of work. You have young people going to colleges that they can't afford. You're seeing in like all across the Western world, you don't see two 21-year-old kids getting married and buying a house because they can't bloody afford to, right? And then you have the older generation saying, well, we really need to do something. Birth rates are falling. So what we're going to do is we won't let the free market fall in price so that these young people can get a chance. We'll just bring new immigrants over and let them live.
That's right.
It's a really inhumane way of doing it. And I'll just add to
there's
that.
a couple there that I want to touch on.
For the United States, who says that they're all about immigration. Well, if you're all about immigration, why are you only allowing people that can cross your southern border? What about the people that you left behind in Syria, Afghanistan? I can just keep rattling off countries. It's just the countries that are close to you. What about the Indians and the Chinese and everybody else who are trying to immigrate? So it's a horrible way of doing things.
Look, it's a wonderful thing that the world over the last few years has built up a much larger middle class, right? We've had this acceleration of people coming out of poverty. That's a very, very positive thing. It's happened in China, it's happened in India in big numbers, all that sort of thing, right? Now, isn't it better? Now, I don't obviously have the answer, but isn't it better for those individual countries to be bringing themselves up with trade, with stimulus, if you like, from other economies, right? Okay, then rather than importing them. Okay, because to me, the population in the particular countries isn't the issue here. I mean, obviously, you've got some countries that are overpopulated. That's an issue. But, ultimately, shouldn't they be trying to build their economies? This is what for all the negativity about China, and believe me, I'm very positive about Chinese people. I'm not very positive about the Chinese government. But
Why?
ultimately, why?
Yeah.
Why don't you like the CCP, Aaron?
Oh, look, I don't know. Geez,
They get shit done.
Yeah, well, they do. Well, okay. Obviously, I'm just fundamentally against communism. Simple as that. I see their human rights records. Okay, I see the fact that they are right now in this very country infiltrating our political system and having undue influence. I also see the fact that they are using that financial control to push every day. Those 21-year-olds can't get a home because of one aspect of it is the economy coming in from China. There's lots of different reasons.
Well,
Again, my argument would never be
yes.
against the people, but it's very much against the policies of the government.
Right. So now I'm going to have to defend China. My
Oh,
God, what's
yeah.
happening to my
No,
life?
sorry, I'm going to have to do this one too. Can I do it?
Go,
Can I have a
you,
tap?
you go first. I was going
It's-
to ready myself to defend China.
No,
I'll get you a nice red cup.
I was reading a report about 3 months ago that it's not actually China that owns most of the international property in Australia. It's actually Eastern Europe and America.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But that's not the issue. He's
Yeah.
talking about the new investment from them. Let me just say,
Belton Road, things like that too.
Yeah.
well, I'll address the Belt Road in a second, but let's just say with the Chinese government, okay, we would prefer to see governments similar to what we have,
Of course,
even though we bitch and moan about it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
but we like
The
similar.
Chinese are able to plan things much longer.
Mhm.
Nobody really accuses. It's very interesting when I hear people criticize China.
Mhm.
Nobody ever really accuses the Chinese government of not acting in the best interest of Chinese people.
And I
We,
can't,
we never accuse them of
and I
that.
can't do that because
We-
they do.
We
They
say
do.
stuff like, "Oh, the human rights, things." Well, yeah, but I mean, look at what we've done in the West.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit rich for us to put that criticism on them. But when it comes to the Chinese, are coming in. No, Chinese people are coming in and investing, not Chinese government. Chinese people are coming in,
No,
right?
I disagree. Chinese government are investing in our government, and that's a real
Well,
issue.
that's sure, but we all invest in other countries' governments as well. But let me just put this
It's
to
called
you.
aid.
Because of well, maybe that's what they think. Maybe the Chinese think they're giving us aid. They're a much
perhaps.
wealthier country than we are. But let me just say this. When we sit there and complain about the Chinese spending their money in the way that they are, things like the Belt and Road Initiative,
Mhm.
I've said for a very long time now, we shouldn't criticize them for having the Belt and Road Initiative. We should be asking, why don't we have the Five Eyes Initiative? Why don't we have a Belt and Road Initiative? Here we are going around the world. Oh, we're all for free trade. We love this. We love that. Oh, but we're not going to trade with you,
Yeah.
right?
And we don't restrict what we
love all
can
those
trade
things,
with you.
but we're not going to do them. Then China does. We're like, oh, how dare you? Well, let's just look at that for a moment. We've got the Chinese who are pretty much manufacturing everything for us.
Sure.
Okay. And what do? We hand them over US dollars, Australian dollars, whatever. And then we won't sell them anything. So, for example, they wanted our milk products. We know that Woolworths and Coles for years and years, you can't buy more than 1 or 2 tins of milk formula, baby formula.
Yep.
So because the Chinese are buying it and sending it over there. So look, I might be like a crazy capitalist, but would you not then just create the product in enough volume to supply China? Isn't that the logical thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
We are
100%.
so idiotic with what we are doing. And so the Chinese are sitting there with trillions of dollars of Western money. What exactly are they supposed to spend it on? Or put it into
Gold.
savings, and then it just sits there and it just
No, they've been spending it.
inflation hits it and all the rest
They've
of
been
it.
spending it on internal infrastructure, right?
Of course.
No, they don't.
Hang on, and then we can talk about the cities that are not being populated, all that kind of thing over there. There's a lot of things. Me being negative about the Chinese government is not me being positive about the Australian one. Make no mistake about it, right? These are both very, very flawed. The ideology is very different, but the flaws are
Okay, but the
rather
things that
similar.
the things that you were criticizing the Chinese for,
Yep.
and I'm not trying to defend China.
No,
I'm
we-
certainly
I know.
not. But the things that you're criticizing China for,
Yep.
without criticizing our countries for, let me just put the proposition to you
sure.
that if Australia said, "Listen, this is what we're going to do. We are going to put everybody to work. We're going to have all these manufacturing jobs, etc. We're going to go around the world. We are going to build the Australian Belt and Road Initiative.
Yep.
We are going to go in and interfere with other countries'
Mhm.
governments. We are going to go there. We're going to really stamp ourselves as one of the leading countries in the world.
Mhm.
Would anybody here oppose that?
Why? We're
So
doing-
why
hang
would
on,
the
hang on,
Chinese? So
hang
why
on.
would the Chinese oppose it? Of course they're not going to oppose it. They're acting in their interests. It's us that are the idiots.
Yeah,
not them.
we've done it differently in the past with things like Vietnam or currently in Ukraine or
Oh, we
whatever.
did brilliantly in Vietnam.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
kind of my point. But okay, we don't do it in the same ways. They're doing it in a far more intelligent way. They're using financial control to control the politics of a region and all that kind of carry on. Right?
Why we don't do that in Africa?
Oh, we just do
we
it.
haven't done that in all the poorer countries.
No,
in
I
Asia.
think we just do it really poorly, quite
Right.
frankly. But we give it a go.
So your criticism of China is that they are doing what we did, just more intelligently.
Yeah,
Is that
spot on.
your
That-
criticism?
that's my
Okay, gotcha.
criticism. Yeah,
Good,
spot
make
on.
sure we're on the same page.
That's
So
All right.
he's comparing China to Australia about how bad Australia actually is.
No,
So
I'm-
if
no, I'm
China's doing
saying-
a better job than us, like
It's
we must be
frightening, right?
really
No,
terrible.
I'm saying how bad we are in the West at promoting and staying true to what we say that we want to do. Look at all the arguments that they have in the United States. Well, do we want to be in the country in the business of nation building? No, get out of Afghanistan. Get out of all those regions. Then they say, "Oh, look at how unstable those regions are." And what are we going to do? Should we send money? Well, why don't you just go back in there with your military?
Yeah.
Then China comes in and says, well, look, we'll support you. We won't get involved in your politics. And we go, oh, how dare China do that? How could they possibly want to increase their international reputation amongst all the countries that have had the West's backs turned on them? And just on that note, talk about the BRICS nations.
Yeah, I was
right?
hoping
I was
we
going
would
to
go
say,
this
just
way.
so I can.
Is actually
We
where we're going to
currently
drag it.
have in the West, we currently have 1/3 of the world's economy under sanction or trade restrictions.
Yes.
1/3 of the world's economy. What kind of fantasy land do people in the West live in that they think that 1/3 of the world is going to say, oh, yeah, we're shit. And so we're just going to sit here and be poor. Nobody's going to do
No,
that.
that's right.
That's, of course, you're going to see Vladimir Putin go and meet with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Of course, you're going to see the BRICS nations say, well, stuff the West, we'll trade with each
Well,
other.
my opinion is very, very straightforward. The BRICS nations, right, are going to build the greatest political and economic control of the earth because they are the greatest part of the population right now. What I'm sure I'm not the first person to say it because I'm certainly not the brightest guy in this world, but I can tell you right now, I see the petrodollar collapsing within, and I'm going to be really generous and say 18 months, right? I can see.
It won't be that long.
Yeah, I know.
No, it won't be that quick. But
I think it will be. I actually think it'll be less than that. I think that basically, the fact that, okay, the BRICS nations are turning this and putting their currency onto gold, right? Something obviously the US stopped way back in the 70s, all right? Biden's in there, just print. Okay. The inflation's going up. They're running the country down in so many, I'm talking about the US here, in so many social ways, all going to carry on. So you've got social decay in the US. So they haven't got a base to come from, okay, to really fight and maintain their position as the overriding economy in the world. The BRICS nations will take over and the petrodollar will drop. Now that Saudi Arabia are involved, that's my honest opinion. I think that now that the actual petrol itself, the oil, if you like, right, is under control by someone else, I can see utter disaster unless, and I didn't actually want to make this show a big pro-Trump show, but you guys have said it many times here. But the reality is, okay, the only thing that can really save the Western world, in my opinion, right now is Trump getting back in because he'll start drilling in the US, all of that. The reliance will come off there. There'll be the great disruptor will be back in power. And I think that is the only way that we can stop Western economies from collapsing.
I think that you have. I love the Western countries of the world. I most especially love the Five Eyes countries, which is Australia,
Yep.
Canada, the United States, New Zealand. I don't know why they're even there, and the United Kingdom. And I think that the values that we stand for are really important. And I would
agree.
say to you, with all due respect, that if you think what you've just described, I think that you have a very poor view of Western society if the strength or failure of our future relies on just one human being.
Oh, God, no.
As in
No,
Donald-
no,
well, that's
then
what you
maybe I
said.
haven't made that, sorry.
You said unless Donald Trump comes back.
Then
Donald Trump may do some positive, may
Sure.
not, whatever. At the end of the day, we need to make sure we need to come back together, solidify what our core values are. We can argue about abortion and tax rates, all these other things,
Sure.
but what are our core values? And we need to make sure that we strengthen those values and that we actually push those values around the world.
Mm.
At the moment, we've got American kids burning American flags.
Yeah,
We've got Australian kids saying that we should get rid of Australia Day. We just have such an attack on the ideals of our nations.
Well-
And it's not actually China and the BRICS nations' strength that we should be scared of. It is our weakness, in my view.
Well, and that's actually my point. So, quite frankly, I use the Trump sort of issue as linking in with what you were saying, to be frank. But I think it winds all the way back to what we were originally talking about with this Klaus Schwab situation. This is the decay that's going through predominantly the Western world. Okay, that is the issue, the control that's going through the Western world, right? I personally, because I'm not going to sit here, I'm not one of these people who go, oh, I hate Russia and all the rubbish that's going on that's anti-Russia at the moment. Sorry, I'm not going to buy in on it, right? Because I could actually see both sides of the argument. But I can honestly say, if you've got 2/3 of the population of the earth who are thinking one way right now financially, I think it is going to change the balance of power.
Well, I think that you got 2/3 of the world that are struggling. And, if you look at the poor people in our societies versus what's considered to be poor elsewhere, that's a really, really significant problem. And we have to address it. But here's what I would say is the kind of thing that concerns me. When people talk about socialism, they go and talk about Venezuela, right? And they act as though we all tend to do it, including me. We act as though when somebody says they want socialism, they want Venezuela. Don't you look forward to the day that you run out of toilet paper as well, right?
Oh, that happened during COVID.
It happened during COVID. But this is the sort of thing that people talk about. Then the socialists, the people that say they're socialists, they talk about countries like Sweden, but they won't tax you like they tax Sweden. They don't want to do that. They want to have this lopsided tax system.
Sure.
But what nobody ever talks about is a country like South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Now, South Korea, what they did, they had a concern that none of the big industries like steel, etc., could exist because of foreign competition. And so what they did was, for a period of time, they created just these companies and just these handful of families. Now, we don't really like that idea. It doesn't sound right to us. But South Korea today doesn't really have that. They've got a much more free market system over there. And South Korea today has an extremely high quality of life. And they've got a great economy to show for it.
I thoroughly agree.
That's the sort of thing that I think when we go around the West, or we go around the rest of the world and say, well, here's what we're going to do. We want you to have free market capitalism. We also want you to have all the social programs that we have. And look what you'll have. What? Massive debt levels at 120% of your GDP.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
No.
I mean, Australia's fared pretty well, but nobody wants that. What I'm saying is I don't think we're promoting anything. We're not talking about how great we are. And in fact, we're actually talking and telling the rest of the world how bad we are. Whether it comes to issues like The Voice, when it comes to issues like Black Lives Matter in America, everyone says the world is sexist and the patriarchy and all these sorts of things. All we push out in the media that the rest of the world sees is that we suck.
Yeah,
that's what we tell everyone.
We're the ones who are saying it, and we are living that self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, I'm wearing this shirt, right? An Australian flag. I wear this shirt, and people call me racist. That is ridiculous. And the fact that ethos has got into people's brains, right? That negativity about their own country, that's a real problem. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that is. I don't actually fear. I think the word fear is probably the wrong word altogether, but I don't have those negative feelings about the BRICS nations and that kind of thing. In fact, quite frankly, I'm happy for them to build themselves up, right? I see it better for the world if less people are in poverty, right? Simple as that. But I think the great negative issue we've got in the world right now is that as the Western world is tearing itself apart and damaging it and is not proud of itself and is burning flags and telling each other that they're this, that, they're bad because they're a gender, a color, or this or that, or whatever. And I see these people, the Dr. Evils or Klaus Schwabs of the world, who are sitting there up the top, who just appeared out of absolutely nowhere, and I see them as very much the puppet masters of this.
I think
why is Target and Kmart just on this last Australia Day said that they took down and said that they will no longer be selling Australia Day merchandise
because they're effectively blackmailed into it. That's how it works. Well, they're blackmailed into it. It was
a decision made by the CEOs because the CEOs went to school. They were taught that being patriotic is a form of racism, and they're too scared. I do not agree with
you at all. I'm telling you right now that there's a lobbying level right now in Australia, and it's around the world. But when it comes to we're talking about Kmart and whatever here, the lobbying world has got so much power that they basically are bullying these companies into these ideals and pushing them.
Do you really think they can bully West Farmers?
Yes, I absolutely do.
I think there's someone in the West Farmers who wholeheartedly believes
because they recruit
they
recruit these people.
Yes,
just like the Alan Joyces of this world, they recruit these people.
Another one who wholeheartedly believes in all the LGBTQ crap. Well, he's a part of it, and all the other stuff. He wholeheartedly believes in it. So the problem is you've got these people leading a whole heap of. So you've got one or two really educated people who understand the system. They're manipulating that system to trick the uneducated into doing what they want them to do.
Sure.
It's all about control.
Of course
It's
it is.
like, because let's say they sacrifice 2 or 3 years worth of income for a company the size of Wesfarmers. That's not going to break the bank.
Of course not.
They'll make more than make up the money at a later date and time.
Well,
They're
I
just
dare you to go to China.
like, you do one of
I
those
dare you to
things.
go to China and set fire to their flag.
Oh, you'll
I
be shot
dare
on
you
the
to go
spot.
to China and on whatever their national day is, to tell the shops over there you can't sell the Chinese flag.
Oh, that's
Oh, they'll
right.
shoot you on the
Right?
spot.
It's just absolutely absurd.
Oh, look, I believe it was 1989, wasn't it, when Tiananmen Square, with the gentleman standing in front of the tank, that they pretty well made their thoughts very clear about what they were seen as being anti-patriotism.
Well, the simple thing is
a horrible thing that took place that day, and a great explanation of how the Chinese world works, I guess, to the rest of the world. But they don't put up with this crap. They don't put up with the gender studies in schools. They don't put up with the TikToks. They don't put up with the stuff that is eroding our society.
go have a look at the Australian military recruitment videos.
Mhm.
Look at the American recruitment videos.
Oh,
And then go have a look at the South Korean military videos. Have a look at the Chinese
yep.
recruitment
Or just name
videos.
any country. If
Like
as
any
long as
other
it's not
country.
the UK, Canada, or so, as long as it's not the strongest, wealthiest Western countries out there, look at any other countries.
That's
military
right. It's an
recruitment videos
absolute
and you're
joke.
fine.
The other reason
Yeah.
you've got the BRICS is not only because they're looking at the West and going, we don't want to become like that in terms
Sure.
of their social values. The other part is, of course, that it was used in terms of weaponization, the
Yeah.
US dollar.
Of course.
When they put sanctions against Russia and said, right, you can't trade with anyone, they suddenly realized, well, hang on a second, why are we doing deals in the US? So they shot themselves in the foot there, the United States, when they
thoroughly
did that.
So I had a theory studying economics, and back in my days, the younger days as a broker, when I was first starting out, that when you look at the price of oil,
Yep.
and look at production of oils from OPEC nations, it often follows US interest rates and the flow of US dollars. And I always thought it's interesting because oil is, and most commodities, is traded in US dollars. So if you're a commodity producing place relying on US dollars, and you see that US dollar is inflating, then you're going to want to decrease production of oil so that you actually get more value for the oil, right? Now, when you're seeing the amount of inflation that we've just seen, and you're seeing it's not just the debt that they currently have, they've got $31 trillion worth of debt, but you've got 170 trillion or something in unfunded liabilities coming on the books soon. We're not talking about now 20 years away. We're talking about the Medicare system over there, their Medicare trust fund starting to run out of money in 2028. That's the next election. We're talking about their Social Security trust funds running out of money in 2032. This is a real problem. And if you are relying on the US dollar, if that's what you're selling your product in, why would you? And you have no control of your currency.
Yeah.
You might be a really strong economy and you're relying on America's. Why would you do that?
Well, this is me winding my
point
point back to what I was saying before, the fact that everything's based on the old petrodollar, and as the BRICS nations get more and more powerful, that becomes. I mean, I just see it devaluing to a point where, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I worry about it. All those people are obviously going to default on their mortgages, all that sort of things can be absolutely terrible, terrible mess. And I don't know what they're going to sell the loans out at 10 cents in the dollar, and people are still going to retain their debts. There's going to be a lot of very bad social effects because of a ridiculous American dollar.
Look, I think that might be overstating it. I do think there's going to be a move away from the US dollar as being the as strong a world reserve currency as it is.
Sure.
And certainly I think it's going to be less reliant. So I think it's overstating it to say there's going to be a complete collapse. At the end of the day, the debts are owned by the banks. Ultimately, it's owned by the Federal Reserve. There's going to be government intervention. I just remind people don't actually realize this. During the Great Depression, unemployment rate about 25%.
Yep.
Right. During the Great Recession, it was about 15, 18%. So it's not quite as bad as we may think. If you actually have a look at some of the economies in the world that are really struggling, you're looking at places where you have 60% and 70% unemployment, especially in young people, and that becomes a real problem. I don't think you're quite going to reach that stage in the US or in the West. Certainly for us sitting here in Australia, we are so incredibly lucky. Whenever I hear people slaying off about Australia, I'm like, dude, just go, you know what? If you don't like Australia, fair enough. Like, I'm with you. If you're young and you can't think of a redeeming quality about Australia, no problems. Please just take a year off and go overseas.
Yeah.
Just go and travel, because it puts things back in perspective when you come back here. For all of the flaws, for all of the things that you get upset about with Australia, we are so bloody lucky. And one of the things that makes us so lucky is that we are a mineral exporting country, followed by agriculture. So the world always wants our commodities. And when the world falters a bit, we do pretty well. And New Zealand does well as a result of Australia doing well, sort of as a byproduct.
Okay.
Well,
we're
New
really
Zealand
lucky
is
down
the
here.
eastern status of Australia.
It is. Well, and interestingly, actually,
There's a politician
as
trying to get that
as
to
a
happen.
quick side note, just on New Zealand, I made a pretty disparaging comment about Jacinda
Oh,
Ardern last time I was on.
You did.
Now, the great pride of New Zealand, the Labor Party, one of their members just recently said that they should have a referendum about New Zealand joining Australia.
Yep.
Brilliant, New Zealand. Good on you.
Yeah.
Good to see how much pride you've got.
Well, every Kiwi
Well,
I know
one-
has great pride in their country, so I'm sure that'll go well.
Well, it
really
must have been represented very well by New Zealand Labor.
So
Wow.
my big gripe, probably with what's going on internationally, is we're so tied up in India and Russia, especially for a lot of our international trade with these so-called free trade agreements. Personally, I feel that any company should be able to trade with any other country that they choose to. Obviously, you're paying import duties, taxes, and whatever's required. The level at which the Australian government goes to try and restrict our trade to countries, especially such as Indonesia and Vietnam, alternatives, like if you're not getting a good deal in China, don't go to China, go to another country.
Absolutely.
And I hate the fact that they're trying to restrict on what you can do in that side of things.
Well, that's an interesting position for somebody like you to hold.
Why?
Well, isn't it, these union guys that run around and say, we want to have
You can't
high
let that go,
wages?
can you?
No, you really can't. No, not at all. I will never for the rest of your life let that one go, my friend. So you guys want high wages, right? We want
Of
high
course
wages.
we
We
do,
want this and
yes.
that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's my
I'll tell you
fault.
what I'll do. I'll increase your wages and I'll shut down your job. How's that
Yep.
sound, right? And
Union
if I don't,
101.
and if I don't do it, you say, Shaquille, you can't do that, you evil man. How can you ship our jobs offshore? What's wrong with you, you global elite capitalist pig? So, okay, fine. I won't. I'll stay right here and I'll give you the $50 or $500 or whatever it is that you want per hour. But now my competitor, who is located overseas, who's employing children, who doesn't actually adhere to our labor standards,
Yep.
that person come and undercut. So now what do I have to do? Now somebody who
Have to
doesn't
fire
like
everyone.
government, right, Mr. Anti-government, anti-establishment libertarian, now I've got to go to government and say, hey, government, here's what I need you to do. I need you to put in some sort of protective measure to protect me from the competition from overseas. So now government has to do one of two things. One, they have to give me tax subsidies, or two, they have to put a tariff on overseas goods,
Yep.
or three, actually, that they could just ban those overseas goods in order to protect me, like they tried to do with the car industry.
Well,
to
they
protect
need
those
both.
jobs.
Let's face
Yeah.
it.
So when you say, I agree with you, we should be able to buy whatever country that we can. But if those countries are not adhering to our labor laws, which we've all agreed on, and then they can undercut domestic producers here, is that fair? Now, if you don't think it's fair, the question is who's going to pay for it? Because ultimately, those higher wages that are demanded from those unions and other groups comes at the cost of higher prices for the Australian consumer.
Yes.
Somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah. No, it's
So
not
what-
somebody. It's always the consumer.
Well, that's right. So what do we want? Do we want to have total free markets where we can be undercut by people that don't adhere to our rules and regulations? Or do we want to protect the industries that we have against what we consider to be unfair
Well,
competition?
yeah, and again, that comes down to our ethical standard of, okay, we don't want to be condoning child labor. I'm not going to carry on, right? And we'd be competing against it because that's the reality of it. There, in my personal opinion, we need to protect our markets, right? And the things that you're talking about, I don't like it, but I think it's a necessary part of life.
If you look at middle-aged Europe, like the 12th, I think it's the 12th century, before the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
8-year-olds were going to work.
Yep.
Because they had to.
So we should
and-
bring that back here in
No,
Australia.
no.
Is that
So
the theory?
what I'm pointing out is Eastern Europe at the time, it was a case where you did what you had to survive. A lot of the developing countries at the moment are in the same boat. You do what you have to survive. So, but there's a limit to that. Sending a 8-year-old child down into a cobalt mine is just going to kill them. So I think things like that should be regulated.
So if we put an 8-year-old child in a factory and work them 12 hours a day, that would be okay.
Again, you're causing damage to the kid's development. So no, it's not okay.
So
So-
back to your point then, where you said we should be free to buy goods from any country
Yep.
at all.
But do we know how those goods are produced in those countries?
That's my point.
Yeah. So that's where it becomes a really, really tricky situation, because how much of the labeling do we know is actually true and accurate?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a really, really tough one. So until you have those true and accurate knowing, like for example, Glencore they never used to use cobalt. I'm using it because I know them. A lot of their lithium and cobalt never used to come from the Congo Republic. It was actually sourced quite ethically. And then quietly, they just started importing from the Congos, which is not ethically sourced. So taking coffee, for example.
So what would you propose here in order to make sure?
Personally, I think electric vehicles should be banned full stop. They're not safe.
But that's relation to electric vehicles. What would you propose in order to make sure the goods are being produced ethically? Do we want government intervention? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I think a person should be able to make up their own decision. So if
a be able to choose a cheaper good that is made by slave labor or child labor or anything like that, as long as the person knows that's where it's coming from.
So the thing is, you're assuming
when people buy from Kmart, right?
Yeah,
they're buying people from let's be honest, right? The manufacturing of almost everything in Kmart is questioned.
How often can you go buy a hat that says "Made in Australia"?
You just can't.
You can't. Why?
Because again,
there's no industry for it.
Well, you're wearing an Australian flag,
which
is made in China.
Australian flag, of course.
Bangladesh, actually, I went out of my way.
Yeah.
But,
so that's the thing. Like, there's just no option. You have to buy it from those countries at the moment because people are being undercut. So the thing is, like, you can tell by the price of a product. If a product comes from Australia, it's more expensive. We know that because we have different labor laws and all that. And so there's a price to it, and people do. Some people do.
So
what's happening
is prepared to pay the extra for the things that were made in Australia or New Zealand or the UK or whatever, US, Canada, many other Western countries. If people were prepared to pay extra for that stamp, we wouldn't have the issue that we're talking about right now.
But the biggest problem at the moment, the reason that people aren't buying those more expensive products in Australia is because they're struggling to pay for food. They're struggling to pay for water. They're struggling to pay for the power bills, their mortgages they can't afford. On top of that, the land rates, any taxes, stamp duties, and all that other stuff, and all these other government charges that they have to pay just to survive, they can't afford.
So again, I don't want to be like the devil's advocate or anything, but are you suggesting then that the poor people of the West are struggling so much that they have no choice but to actually buy from these, slave labor and child labor places just in order to survive, and that therefore justifies it? Is that what I'm hearing? The
bit that I find really fascinating, and this is where I get really annoyed, especially with the millennials out there. You know how they go, "Oh, we're two 21-year-olds, we're university qualified, we've just left, let's say 25, we've left university, we've got good jobs, we're teachers and police officers or whatever."
Well, teachers is not a good job.
Yeah, I know. Okay, a nurse isn't a good job. Okay, so two engineers. Okay. They're both like from Indian immigrants. So I had to slip it in. And they turn around, we can't afford a house. So, but why are you trying to buy a house in Dalkeith that's like $800,000? Right. So a lot of the people, no. Okay. So a lot of people these days, and I'll stand by this one, the day of get out of school, get a job, and buy your family house no longer exists.
No. Yeah, so that's because the boomers had a bloody dream run and left the millennials with absolute shit. That's what happened.
Okay. That was poor government policy that has caused that, not the boomers.
Honestly, who was voting them in? It was the boomers voting for these government policies, right?
Because they had lack of knowledge to understand how politics actually implement. We have this argument all the time.
Travis,
it's great.
Travis,
anyway, let me go.
Like your wife says, we have 2 minutes. Get it done.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll throw something at you later. So what's lost my line of thought. So people got to start understanding that it's not, you can't just go straight into your family home now. That era is dead and gone. Like with us to be able to afford our place, we had to buy 2 investment properties before we actually purchased the house that we live in.
Did you guys remember Healthy, Wealthy and Wise?
Yes.
Right? Paul Clitheroe, I remember when I was about 7 or 8 years old. He came out and he said, when you buy a house, you should buy a house which is 3 to 5 times your annual income. That's the price bracket that you should be in. Right? Now, a little bit lower here in Western Australia, but now you need 3 to 5 years of your annual income as a deposit to buy a house. Or you got to try and buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a backyard anywhere in Sydney or Melbourne. You got no chance.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. It's all changed.
Yeah, so it has.
We could afford to buy a house within half hour of the city. We chose not to because we knew it would put us under pressure. So we're an hour out of the city.
Yeah, but that's okay for you. But not everybody's going to be like that. If somebody
but
works in
also,
the city, what are
I
they
don't
supposed to
smoke.
do?
I don't drink. We don't go out to dinner, so we can afford the house that we afford.
I'd rather,
How many
I'd
people-
rather smoke and drink and
Spot
go for
on.
dinner and
So,
rent.
there's a lot of people out there who would rather go traveling around the world,
Mm.
go buy a car on finance rather than paying cash. So when I spoke to my grandfather when he purchased his first house, they didn't go out for 3 years to save up a deposit. They didn't go out to dinner. He stopped drinking. They sacrificed to be able to save up the deposit. How many 20-year-olds that you know now that will actually stay home and cook dinner instead of ordering Uber Eats?
Yeah, I understand.
You know, how many have Netflix, Disney Plus, Stan subscriptions? They have a membership to the gym. They have a credit card that they've maxed out, and they've got a personal loan
Yeah,
to
but
go on a holiday.
What are they supposed to do?
It's the two totally different
got these
times,
things
and all the laws are
dangled.
different.
They've got these things dangled in front of them. What are they really
So
supposed
personal
to do?
accountability.
Sure, but
So
even
it's-
even if they live like that, right?
Derek,
Let's take
never
college.
thought he
Let's
was the
take college
boomer.
education and all the rest of it.
Yep.
You hear that the boomers in America. Oh well, you know, I worked my way through college. Doing what? You were part-time working as a waitress or a waiter at some fast food restaurant.
Mhm.
You think that you could actually pay off a college tuition or university tuition in Australia working
No way.
part-time at McDonald's
Okay,
today? It
so-
couldn't happen, but their generation, that
Okay,
could happen.
let's throw another one here.
Mhm.
Okay, straight out of university, how much does a teacher earn?
80 grand probably.
80 grand roughly. Fully qualified plumber in WA, what are they earning?
I've got no idea, probably
Oh,
100. I don't know.
130.
Closer to 150.
Right.
Okay. So why would you go to university where there's not that many jobs around when you become a tradesperson, where earn as you're learning and then earn way more money?
Well, I don't know
There's
why
just-
you'd want to go to university at all, but that's
Spot
not.
on.
But that's not the point. What are you
Well,
going
it
to
is
do?
because
What are you
that's
gonna
the
do? You
situation.
realistically, I know we're all sitting there saying the genders are equal. Do you really expect the really girly girl who finishes year 12 to say, you know what I'll do? I want to be a plumber and shovel shit for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. That's a man's job. Girls are just not going to do it.
Oh,
Sexist
and
man.
on that bombshell, it's the end of the show. Thank you very much.
Is it really
gentlemen.
already?
I don't know. I feel like I've got tears in my eyes at the moment. I really do.
You know, you all don't get blamed for this show.
Of course I will. Of course I will.
Mayor of Wanneroo.
Oh, can you imagine? People are going to cut bits of it out of this and just absolutely attack me with it. Never mind.
Yeah.
As long as they
that'd be
don't
fun.
attack me. You're
of course,
responsible.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
I'm just reading from a teleprompter that you guys can't see.
Of course. You know, the great thing is, though, this is all about free speech, okay? No, there's been nothing edited. We just get on with it. We say our opinions, and sometimes we disagree. What's wrong with that, right? Okay, disagreements and a bit of discourse, it makes you grow as a person. No good being stuck in the old echo chamber. So thank you very much, Mr. Carter.
For the record, I'm not a lefty. Just putting that out there.
Action and words, my friend.
The bit I love.
Thank
I
you very
find
much,
really-
Shaq, our international visitor. He's Perth boy. But there you go. And of course, Derek Whitaker. Jeez, mate, I'll tell you right now, you poor thing.
You just throw it out there and look what happened, mate.
Look at that.
It's
You
really-
Give him the
leave-
tennis ball and the rackets
Oh,
and let
no,
it
this
watch him
was
play.
For you, it was a game of fishing today. You threw the line out, sat in the back of the car, had a couple of drinks, and just let the fish fight over it.
It was awesome.
It's really funny because we've actually got another video queued up that we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, I thought I was waiting for the halfway point where
So
a
was
song
I.
was going to be played, and then we were.
I very much tried to, and you lot wouldn't give me
Oh,
a
good.
second.
Yeah.
So I just thought
Yeah.
it changed from a show to a podcast very quickly.
Well, because
All right.
Mr. Bloody slave employer over there, right, telling me he has to do it because of how poor everyone is.
This is coming from the guy that wholesales everything.
All right. Thanks for being part of course. What's the show called again, mate?
The Shaq and
The
Travis
Shaq
show.
and Travis
The Shack Attack.
The Shaq and Travis, what's
also
that? The Shaq
known.
show.
The Bogan and the Indian. The Bogan and the Quickie Mart.
Oh, the greater wealth here at Edge Radio Australia. You idiots. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
That's all right.
I didn't realise it was that far into the show.
Oh, it was just,
Apologies.
no,